As we journey toward the latter chapters of life, the mistakes we make carry more weight, as they leave lasting impressions not just on ourselves but on those we leave behind. In these years, the stakes are higher, but so too is the potential for wisdom. If we allow ourselves to drift unquestioning and unchecked, we risk becoming prisoners of regret, lost in emotions we were once strong enough to control. We are all in this together, seeking ways to strengthen ourselves and those we love. Yet, even in our collective pursuit of resilience, the mistakes we overlook can undo years of inner fortitude. Let us walk this path together, guided by the ancient wisdom of those who have navigated these same waters before us. Before we dive into these powerful Stoic lessons, let me ask you for a quick favor. If you find value in the wisdom we're about to explore, hit that like button to let the YouTube algorithm know this content resonates with you. It helps spread these timeless ideas to others who need them. And if you want to keep learning, growing, and becoming the best version of yourself through ancient wisdom and modern insights, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Let's continue this journey of self-mastery together. Certainly. Let's delve deeper into each of those points, adding more explanation and insight to fully capture their essence and relevance through the lens of Stoicism. Clinging to the past. Clinging to the past is a form of psychological imprisonment, binding us to moments that no longer serve us. It is an easy mistake to fall into as we age, because our memories, especially the pleasant ones, can feel like an escape from the difficulties of the present. Yet by living in the past, we detach from the here and now, losing sight of the opportunities and lessons before us. The Stoics teach us that time is fleeting, and the past is an illusion. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, cautions us: what is the state of your mind when you are not focusing on the present, when you are dwelling on what is out of reach? He calls on us to realize that the past is dead, and no amount of longing or reflection will change it. By clinging to the past, we create an attachment that prevents us from fully experiencing life as it unfolds. We rob ourselves of the ability to act in the moment, to make decisions based on wisdom, and to accept the world as it is rather than how we wish it could be. True freedom, according to Stoic thought, lies in embracing the present, acknowledging that the past cannot be altered, and directing our efforts towards what is within our control now. We must remember that the only moment we possess is the present. By letting go of the past, we liberate ourselves from unnecessary suffering and allow ourselves to truly live. Neglecting to let go of destructive emotions. Destructive emotions, anger, envy, resentment, are among the most dangerous forces we can harbor, particularly as we grow older. These emotions not only erode our sense of peace, but they distort our judgment, making us prisoners to irrational impulses. Seneca reminds us, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Destructive emotions, left unchecked, become habitual, shaping our character in ways that can lead to deep regret. To let such emotions control us is to give away our power. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that while we cannot always control external events, we have full control over our reactions to them. He said, "It is not things that upset us, but our judgments about those things." When we hold on to anger, grudges, or bitterness, we are allowing external circumstances or past wrongs to dictate the state of our mind. We are, in essence, choosing to suffer. Letting go of destructive emotions is not about suppressing them. It's about understanding their impermanence. Just as clouds pass in the sky, so too do our emotions. The Stoics emphasize that emotions should never dictate our actions or decisions. We must learn to recognize when anger or envy arises, and rather than letting it fester, we examine it, ask ourselves whether it serves us, and then release it. By mastering our emotions, we reclaim our inner strength. The true Stoic is not emotionless, but is deeply aware of their emotions and chooses not to be enslaved by them. Living without purpose. To live without purpose is to drift aimlessly through life, never truly arriving anywhere of value. Purpose gives direction to our existence. Without it, the days blend together, and we lose sight of what we are striving for. This mistake becomes even more dangerous as we age. as we may feel that our most productive years are behind us. However, the Stoics argue that purpose is not tied to youth or achievement, but to how we choose to live in each moment. Seneca, in his letters, famously said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Wasting time stems from living without purpose, without a guiding principle or reason for being." The Stoics believe that every human being has a unique role to play in the world, and our purpose is to fulfill that role to the best of our ability. It is not about grand ambitions, but about aligning ourselves with nature and living virtuously. Purpose, for a Stoic, is rooted in cultivating virtue, courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. It means striving for personal excellence and contributing to the greater good. Without purpose, we fall into a state of inertia, where life happens to us, rather than being something we actively shape. Epictetus warned, "When you are not working on what is necessary, you are wasting your time, for that is the price of our existence." In our later years, the mistake of living without purpose can lead to a sense of meaninglessness and despair. We might ask, what is left for me to do? But the Stoics would remind us that our purpose evolves with time. It could be teaching, mentoring, embodying wisdom for those around us, or cultivating inner peace and mastery over ourselves. The key is never to stop seeking purpose, for as long as we breathe, we are capable of living meaningfully. In each of these mistakes, we see a common thread. They all stem from a lack of self-mastery. Whether we are clinging to the past, succumbing to destructive emotions, or living without purpose, the solution is always the same: self-control and fortitude. By striving for these virtues, we overcome the obstacles that threaten to derail our lives and keep us from achieving our highest potential. We, as seekers of wisdom, are not alone in this struggle. The Stoics before us have walked this path and left us the tools to face our challenges with grace. Let us take their lessons to heart and ensure that in our later years, we do not fall into these traps. Instead, let us rise strong and undeterred, focused on living well and in harmony with the principles that lead to true inner peace. Failing to cultivate discipline. Discipline is the cornerstone of a life well lived, and its absence leads to chaos, both internally and externally. As we grow older, many of us might feel the temptation to relax, to let go of the structured lives we built in our youth, thinking we've earned the right to indulge or become complacent. But this is a deadly mistake. The failure to cultivate discipline in our later years is akin to relinquishing control over our lives, letting circumstances dictate our actions rather than living with intention. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasized the importance of discipline. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This reflects the Stoic belief that self-discipline is the key to managing our responses to external events. When we lack discipline, we are swayed by every minor discomfort, every fleeting desire, and every passing distraction. We lose our ability to stay grounded in what truly matters: our virtues, our values, and our purpose. To the Stoics, discipline is not about rigid self-denial, but about consistently making choices that align with our higher nature. It is the practice of mastering our impulses and habits so that we can live in accordance with reason and virtue. Without discipline, we fall prey to laziness, indulgence, and eventually regret. Seneca warns us, while we are postponing, life speeds. By failing to act with discipline in the present moment leads to a life squandered in trivialities and distractions. In later years, discipline becomes even more essential because our energy may dwindle, but our responsibilities to ourselves and others do not. Discipline keeps us sharp, focused, and able to meet each day with purpose. The disciplined mind is free from regret because it knows it has acted in alignment with its deepest principles. Fear of death. Fear of death is one of the most crippling forces in life, and in later years, this fear can grow more intense as the end of life seems closer. Yet, from a Stoic perspective, fearing death is irrational, for death is a natural part of life, something that awaits us all, regardless of how much we try to avoid it. Epictetus taught, "I cannot escape death, but at least I can escape the fear of it. This sums up the Stoic approach. We may not have control over death itself, but we do have control over how we perceive it. The fear of death is rooted in ignorance of the fact that death is neither good nor bad. It is simply the end of a cycle, as natural as birth. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this idea frequently, reminding himself that it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. To fear death is to live in a constant state of anxiety and dread, which prevents us from fully embracing life. The Stoics believe that when we accept death as inevitable, we become free to live each day, as if it were our last, focusing on the present and making the most of the time we have. Seneca, in his letter to Lucilius, says life is long if you know how to use it. This means that the quality of life is not measured by its length, but by how well we live it, by how well we embody virtue and wisdom in the time given to us. The Stoic lesson is clear. Rather than fearing death, we should prepare for it by living fully and virtuously, so when the time comes, we can face it without regret or terror. By accepting death, we live with greater freedom and peace. Isolating yourself. Isolation, particularly in later years, can be a deadly mistake because it separates us from the community, from relationships, and from the human connection that is vital to our well-being. Stoicism teaches us that human beings are social creatures, meant to contribute to the greater whole, and isolation runs counter to our nature. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another is contrary to nature. This means that to live a fulfilled life, we must remain engaged with others, sharing in the responsibilities and joys of life together. Isolating ourselves leads to loneliness, bitterness, and a sense of purposelessness, which only deepens as time goes on. In isolation, we are more prone to destructive emotions, anxiety, depression, and anger. We lose perspective because we no longer have the external reflections of others to remind us of what is important, of what it means to live well. Seneca, too, warned against withdrawing from society, noting that true wisdom comes not from hiding away, but from engaging with the world while maintaining inner peace. He wrote, "The wise man is self-sufficient, but he needs friends, for society is the school of virtue." Isolation, then, is a missed opportunity for growth and contribution. When we isolate ourselves, we cut ourselves off from the chance to learn, to give, to support, and to be supported. True Stoic strength lies not in avoiding others, but in maintaining our tranquility and virtue while being actively involved in the world. In our later years, it is tempting to withdraw, to believe we have nothing left to contribute, or that others no longer need us. This is a grave mistake. Stoicism calls us to remain connected, to share our wisdom, and to continue to participate in the life around us. By staying engaged, we ensure that our final years are filled with purpose, connection, and meaning. In these expanded explanations, we see how each of these mistakes, failing to cultivate discipline, fearing death, and isolating oneself, are not just personal errors, but violations of Stoic principles. The true Stoic life is one of disciplined action, fearless acceptance of the inevitable, and deep engagement with others. These are the keys to living with peace and purpose in later years. As we reflect on these ideas, let us remind ourselves of the Stoic belief that life, in all its forms and stages, is an opportunity to grow in wisdom and virtue. We must face these final years with the same courage and fortitude we applied in our youth, and in doing so, we ensure that our lives, from beginning to end, are lived well. Let's explore these points with greater depth, highlighting the Stoic wisdom behind avoiding these pitfalls in later years. Hoarding material wealth. Hoarding material wealth is one of the most common traps people fall into, especially in their later years, when the fear of not having enough for the future can grow stronger. But from a Stoic perspective, this obsession with accumulating wealth is a misguided focus on external possessions that cannot bring true peace or fulfillment. The Stoics taught that wealth, while useful, is indifferent in the grand scheme of life. It does not define our character or our happiness. As Seneca wisely stated, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. The problem with hoarding wealth is that it feeds into a never-ending cycle of desire. No matter how much we accumulate, there is always the fear that it is not enough, and this fear erodes our tranquility. In the later stages of life, the Stoic approach is to focus not on material wealth, but on the wealth of virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Epictetus reminds us, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. By hoarding wealth, we distract ourselves from cultivating these virtues, which are the true sources of contentment and inner peace. Moreover, the Stoics believed in living in harmony with nature, and part of this harmony involves recognizing the transient nature of material goods. What we possess today can be gone tomorrow. Instead of clinging to wealth, Stoicism encourages us to use it wisely when it serves a virtuous purpose, but to remain detached from it emotionally. When we hoard wealth, we may grow more fearful of losing it, more anxious about maintaining it, and ultimately more enslaved by it. The more we hoard, the less we live. As we age, hoarding wealth may lead to a lonely and isolated existence, disconnected from the true joys of life, relationships, contribution to society, and personal growth. A Stoic recognizes that when we let go of the obsession with wealth, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters, living in accordance with our values and helping others along the way. Ignoring physical health. Physical health is often neglected in our later years, as the body becomes frail, and many may feel resigned to their physical decline. However, neglecting one's physical health is a serious error, not just for the body but for the mind and spirit. Stoicism teaches that we must care for our body, not out of vanity or fear of aging, but because the body is the vessel through which we engage with the world and practice our virtues. Epictetus emphasized that while we do not have complete control over the state of our body, we do have control over how we care for it. It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. He warned, meaning that to neglect health is to close ourselves off from opportunities for growth. By maintaining our health, we remain active, capable, and able to fulfill our duties to ourselves and others. The Stoics believed in the balance of mind and body. Neglecting either one disrupts this harmony. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on the importance of taking care of both the body and the mind, noting that physical health allows us to pursue wisdom and virtue more effectively. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, but this strength is only fully available to us when we are physically able to act on our principles." Ignoring physical health also undermines our resilience. If we allow our body to become weak, we are more likely to become dependent on others and lose the autonomy that Stoicism holds dear. While aging is inevitable, maintaining a healthy lifestyle through exercise, diet, and mindfulness enables us to face the challenges of old age with greater dignity and strength. A healthy body supports a healthy mind, and together they help us remain engaged with life and its responsibilities. Neglecting health leads to lethargy, lack of energy, and an inability to contribute meaningfully to society. In contrast, caring for our body, even in small ways, shows respect for the life we've been given and allows us to live with purpose, even in our later years. Holding on to toxic relationships. Holding on to toxic relationships is a mistake that can poison our lives in subtle yet deeply destructive ways, especially in old age when the weight of such relationships becomes more apparent. A true Stoic recognizes the importance of surrounding oneself with virtuous, supportive individuals, while also practicing detachment from those who bring harm, negativity, or chaos into their lives. Seneca once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This simple piece of wisdom is a reminder that our relationships are a reflection of the company we keep. Holding on to toxic relationships, whether out of habit, obligation, or fear of loneliness, undermines our pursuit of virtue. Toxic individuals drain our energy, distract us from our goals, and often pull us into destructive emotional states like anger, resentment, or frustration, emotions the Stoics believed we should work to overcome. A key Stoic concept is that of sympathia, or interconnectedness. While we are all part of the greater whole, it is important to recognize when certain relationships no longer serve our higher purpose. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of the importance of choosing one's companions wisely, saying, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This means we should strive for compassion and understanding, but we must not allow ourselves to be dragged down by those who refuse to live in accordance with virtue. Holding on to toxic relationships prevents us from achieving the emotional clarity and tranquility that Stoicism encourages. We cannot find inner peace when we are constantly entangled in the drama and negativity of others. Instead, we must have the courage to let go of these relationships with grace and without malice, understanding that we are not responsible for changing others, only for maintaining our own virtue. In later years, clinging to toxic relationships can breed deep regret. The time we have left becomes more precious, and spending it with people who harm us, either emotionally or mentally, is a waste of that gift. By letting go of these relationships, we free ourselves to focus on those who uplift us, who share our values, and who contribute positively to our lives. The Stoic approach is to love all of humanity, but to recognize that some relationships must be left behind for the sake of our peace and progress. In doing so, we preserve our energy for those who bring value, joy, and meaning into our lives, allowing us to grow and contribute to the world with clarity and strength. In each of these points, hoarding wealth, neglecting health, and holding on to toxic relationships, we see how these common mistakes are not just personal errors, but violations of Stoic principles. The wisdom of the Stoics calls for a life of balance, moderation, and a focus on the inner self rather than external distractions. By avoiding these mistakes, we embrace a life of purpose, health, and harmonious relationships, leading to a more peaceful and fulfilling old age. These pitfalls, if left unchecked, lead to suffering and regret, while embracing the Stoic virtues of simplicity, discipline, and detachment allows us to live fully, even in our final years. Let's delve deeper into these concepts with a Stoic lens, highlighting the importance of avoiding these mistakes and the wisdom that comes from adopting a more reflective and virtuous path in our later years. 1. Refusing to learn. One of the gravest mistakes we can make in our later years is to stop learning. Stoicism teaches us that life is a continual process of growth, and refusing to learn is a direct violation of the Stoic principle that we should always strive for wisdom. The Stoics believe that the pursuit of knowledge and self-improvement should never cease, regardless of age or circumstance. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." This highlights the humility needed to continue learning, even when we think we have acquired enough knowledge. As we age, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our experience alone is sufficient. But Stoicism warns against such arrogance. Wisdom, after all, is not simply knowing facts, but understanding how to live well. And living well requires constant reflection, adjustment, and adaptation to new situations and perspectives. By refusing to learn, we stagnate. Our minds grow rigid, and we become prisoners of our past beliefs and habits. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reminded himself that no matter how much he had achieved or how far he had come, there was always more to learn. He wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up. If thou wilt ever dig." This metaphor of digging suggests that the deeper we go in our pursuit of wisdom, the more we uncover about ourselves and the world around us. In our later years, refusing to learn is not just a rejection of knowledge, but a rejection of life itself. To stop learning is to stop engaging with the world and to fall into mental and spiritual decay. A Stoic must approach every day with curiosity, seeking to learn not only from books and teachings, but from experiences, challenges, and even the mistakes we make. By continuing to learn, we maintain a flexible and resilient mind, able to face the inevitable changes that come with age. 2. Disregarding the wisdom of silence. Disregarding the wisdom of silence is another critical mistake that leads to unnecessary conflict, emotional turmoil, and wasted energy. The Stoics placed immense value on the practice of silence and thoughtful speech. As Seneca observed, silence at the proper season is wisdom, and better than any speech, silence, when used wisely, allows us to reflect, to observe, and to act with greater purpose. In our later years, it can be tempting to offer unsolicited advice or opinions, especially when we feel we have accumulated a wealth of life experience. But the Stoics remind us that often the greatest wisdom comes from restraint. Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to say only what is necessary, and speak only when you have something to say. By practicing silence, we avoid unnecessary arguments, misunderstandings, and emotional agitation. Moreover, silence provides us with the space to listen, both to others and to ourselves. It is through this active listening that we gain greater insight into the nature of things and cultivate inner peace. Silence is not passive, it is a powerful tool that allows us to remain centered and calm in the face of life's challenges. The world around us is full of noise, and the ability to maintain silence within ourselves is a rare and valuable skill. When we disregard the wisdom of silence, we become entangled in the distractions and chaos of everyday life. We lose touch with the deeper truths that can only be heard when we are still. In our later years, this can lead to regret, as we realize that much of the energy spent on arguments, conflicts, or idle chatter could have been better used in reflection and inner growth. Fearing change. Fearing change is one of the most debilitating mistakes people make as they grow older. The Stoics understood that change is an inescapable part of life, and to resist it is to resist the very nature of existence. Marcus Aurelius reflected deeply on the inevitability of change, writing, "The universe's change our life is what our thoughts make it." In this single statement, he encapsulates the Stoic belief that we must not fear change but accept it as part of the flow of life. In our later years, change can be particularly difficult. We may resist it out of fear, clinging to the comfort of the familiar. But Stoicism teaches that change is not something to be feared, but embraced. Epictetus advised that it is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance. This means that the way we perceive change determines how it affects us. Instead of seeing change as a loss, we can view it as an opportunity for growth, learning, and adapting to new realities. Fearing change leads to rigidity, anxiety, and a loss of peace. It causes us to cling to the past, to resist the natural flow of life, and to suffer unnecessarily. But if we accept change as inevitable, we can face it with courage and grace, adapting ourselves to new circumstances with the wisdom of a Stoic. As we age, it becomes especially important to accept the changes that come with physical decline, the loss of loved ones, or shifting social roles. By doing so, we maintain our tranquility and inner strength. Stoicism encourages us to practice amor fati, the love of fate. This means accepting all of life's events, both good and bad, as part of the greater cosmic order. By embracing change rather than fearing it, we live in harmony with nature and avoid the inner turmoil that comes from resisting what we cannot control. Ignoring the inner self. Perhaps the greatest mistake of all is ignoring the inner self. Stoicism teaches that the key to a virtuous and fulfilled life lies not in external accomplishments or possessions, but in the cultivation of our inner character. Ignoring this aspect of ourselves is a denial of the very essence of Stoic philosophy, which holds that the inner self is the seat of reason, virtue, and true happiness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to withdraw into yourself, meaning that we must regularly turn our attention inward to examine our thoughts, motives, and actions. He believed that our inner self is the source of our strength and tranquility, and it is only through self-reflection that we can align ourselves with the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Ignoring the inner self leads to a shallow and superficial life, one that is driven by external validation and temporary pleasures. In our later years, this mistake becomes more pronounced, as we may look back and realize that we have neglected the most important part of our being, our inner character. The Stoics believed that true peace and happiness can only come from within, and that the external world, with all its chaos and unpredictability, cannot provide lasting fulfillment. To ignore the inner self is to ignore the opportunity for growth, reflection, and self-mastery. Epictetus famously said, "Know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly." This means that we must first understand our true nature, our capacity for reason and virtue, and then live in a way that reflects this understanding. Ignoring the inner self prevents us from achieving this alignment and leads to a life of discontent and regret. In the later stages of life, when external achievements begin to fade in importance, the inner self becomes even more crucial. By focusing on our inner development through meditation, reflection, and the practice of virtue, we can find peace, regardless of the challenges and changes we face. Ignoring this part of ourselves leads to a sense of emptiness and unfulfillment, while nurturing it allows us to live with purpose, strength, and wisdom. In summary, these deadly mistakes, refusing to learn, disregarding the wisdom of silence, fearing change, and ignoring the inner self, are all rooted in a failure to live in accordance with Stoic principles. Stoicism teaches us that life is a continuous journey of self-improvement, reflection, and adaptation. By avoiding these mistakes, we cultivate a life of inner peace, wisdom, and resilience no matter what stage of life we find ourselves in. The key is to remain true to our inner self, to embrace change, to seek knowledge, and to practice silence and reflection as tools for deeper understanding and personal growth. We are all bound by the same human condition, and these mistakes are not unique to any one person. But by recognizing them, we can transcend them. Let us strive together for self-control, fortitude, and wisdom in our later years. Let us not fall victim to the deadly errors of complacency, indulgence, or fear. Instead, let us embody the very principles that guide the Stoic path: serenity in the face of chaos, courage in the face of adversity, and wisdom in the face of ignorance. For in the end, it is not how long we lived, but how well. Thank you for watching and taking the time to reflect on these important lessons with me. I truly appreciate your support in this journey towards self-mastery and inner peace. If you found value in this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already part of our community, hit that subscribe button to stay connected. Together, we'll continue exploring the wisdom that can help us all live better, stronger lives. Stay disciplined, stay resilient, and I'll see you in the next one.